Welcome to the Oh So Spurs podcast, where we're going to be debriefing on some back-to-back defeats, but we promise to bring you some realism, and we promise not to be too knee-jerk about it either. And with us to preview it all, we have Stu over in Dubai. How are you?
I'm all right, mate. How you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. I've had a lovely lunch out today. And how are you, Jonny?
Yeah, I'm all right. Not too bad. Certainly not as depressed as half of the fan base. So yeah,
We'll get into that later.
Yeah.
But that it's just come
All
on,
good.
cheer up, everyone.
Yeah.
Si, how are you?
Yeah, I'm pretty good, mate. I've been working today. I don't think my day's been as good as your bank holiday from the sounds of it, and the failed starts that we've just had on this podcast. So let's see if you get through to the end.
Let's do our best. But it's a weird one discussing two defeats in one pod, and then looking at trying to take a middle ground on this. Right, I think there's been to kind of set the scene a bit. There's two extremisms going on right now, and one is get the manager out. He's been found out. He's not good enough. He's a fraud. And the other extreme is back him to the hill. Everything he's doing is perfect, but the players aren't good enough. But I think, guys, there's a happy medium in there, right? And I'll start with you, Stu. But looking at the games against Chelsea and Liverpool, you mentioned before the pod that the Chelsea game annoyed you more, but there were some positives from the Liverpool game. Did you want to kind of open up a bit about what you meant by that?
Yeah, I mean, Chelsea have been bloody awful this season. We should have got something back for losing the first game at home. It was against Poch, and it all went wrong, to be honest, from the lineup. I wasn't happy with the lineup, and I wasn't happy with the players' performance. And it's the first time really. I mean, the Newcastle game, we were off it, but this one, I was just expecting more from the side. The one thing I was happy about, what everyone's been clamoring about, and that includes a few here, that Kulu should be a 10. He should be Madison reserve. I've said it all along. I don't believe he is, and I think he showed yet again he is not good enough for that role. And I think, and that kind of goes into what Ange said after the Liverpool game. Was it Liverpool game? That some players, as lovely as they are, as good of players they are, they might not be the right player to carry on. And I think that's the only thing you can take from the Chelsea game. I was just really disappointed and I was angry. That was the only game I've actually been really, really angry about the entire season. The Liverpool game was disappointing, but the second half, I thought there were shoots of kind of recovery in the sense that you could see the players cared. You could see that on another day they would have capitulated. We could have finished losing 6 or 7. Whereas they carried on going, they tried, and we actually played some lovely football, especially when Richie came on. We actually played some really good football. And I thought there you could see kind of signs that next year, once Ange gets in, the type of player that have the characteristics for the kind of play that he wants us to play, that we can go places. So that kind of made me feel a little bit better, to be perfectly honest.
You're on mute, Jim. Ta-da!
Sorry about that. So, Jonny, so leading on from Stu's comments there was a comment he made about when Richie came on, things were definitely better in terms of the on-pitch performance. And I guess this is where we're talking about the kind of happy medium of analysing where we are with Ange Pstecoglou. I'd argue there's a mistake that's been made in terms of decisions in terms of the lineup, because you can clearly see that when we play with a proper natural number 9 in Richarlison, the whole system seems to flow better, and that is within his control. Do you agree with that, or do you want to add any other context to that comment at all?
I definitely agree with that. I think when you look at I know Stu has been particularly championing and empathizing with Lo Celso, and yesterday again we saw the lineup. I did think, comments regarding the lack of creativity, and obviously Ange talked about that himself in terms of how basically we might have started the game quite well yesterday, as we do, but there was absolutely zero threat despite the sort of nice, crisp, quick passing and a few sort of balls that were a bit more penetrating than they would be usually. But at the end of the day, there's absolutely nothing up, no cutting edge whatsoever.
Yep.
And you just sort of think, well, I know there are issues with Richarlison fitness. I don't know. Like, I mean, we're just a bunch of plebs here with a view as supporters, right? So Ange is making his decisions for his own reasons, but I kind of think, well, you certainly, even if you're not going to start with Richarlison, you bring him on at the beginning of the second half when we're 2-0 down instead of waiting. I know he didn't know at 45 minutes that we were going to be 4-0 down on an hour, but like, why are you waiting until an hour? And that seems to be a little bit of a pattern. I know he has made some substitutions earlier, but like I do think that's an issue. And I definitely agree with you about the lineup issues. I mean, in terms of the starting lineup, not to have either Madison or Lo Celso. And then reading a couple of comments earlier today about the fact that we obviously when we look at the how well the defenders, the two centre halves, are doing, considering their lack of protection, and looking at the delay in Basuma getting back, you're looking at the way that the fullbacks are playing so far up, and especially when it's bloody Emerson Royale.
Oh,
Like,
mate.
what's he doing? I mean, I know he's implementing the system, but like, you're not going to take advantage of the system with him there. So it's just like another exposed area at the back, which happens to be against Mohamed Salah, which is a little bit of an issue. So I think there are quite a few things that are in there, and there was somebody read somebody made an interesting comment. I think it was the Athletic wrote an article, and somebody had written a comment about is there even a case for Lo Celso and Madison to be playing together? Because it has always been one or the other, and I think that's quite an interesting question, actually, because you're looking at how quickly we can lose the ball, and how the argument they were making was that it would potentially allow Madison to play further forward, where he actually can cause some proper damage, like he did at the beginning of the season. So I think that was quite an interesting one, and I think it's. I'm certainly not as depressed as lots of other people. I was in the pub watching the game yesterday when my mate Sean, who you know yourself, Jim, and he. It was weird because Dublin is full of Reds, but there's like 5 Spurs fans in the bar where we were, and nobody's supporting Liverpool, which is really weird. But a couple of them were going on, Ange is out, and all this. I said, lads, what is wrong with you? So I'm not. I expected to lose against Chelsea because we always lose at Stamford Bridge. I expected to lose at Anfield. I'm very disappointed with the way that we didn't show up on Thursday. At least yesterday, there was some positives in the second half once we brought in those players. So, yeah, I think it's just a matter of, well, not just a matter, but I think personnel is the biggest issue, really. And so my last comment before I let somebody else actually talk, but the last thing I would say is just when Ange is talking about next season, he's talking about the changes that need to be made. It's the first time I think I remember him being that kind of frank about the reality of where we're at with the squad. And I guess at the end of the season, or nearly at the end of the season, he can be a bit more honest about that, because we clearly do have players that are not really bought into it, the way we need to play, or they're also not good enough, and maybe players that are good enough but haven't bought into it. So it's going to be interesting, and I'm still optimistic, and I still look at all of those references that we keep making about Arteta and Klopp and how long they took to get the trophies that they've won and to compete the way they have. And I think Ange has on balance, has had a good season, and I really don't like the disrespect he keeps getting from people. There you go.
No. Well, I'm going to let Si talk yet, because I think when Emerson Royale got brought up there, I saw the heckles go up on his back. But I just want to kind of, Si, before you dive in there, I just want to set a little bit of expectation there, that I've seen a lot of people saying on social media, like, why did you start Emerson Royale at left wing back? Yeah. And I'm kind of thinking, the alternative's Oliver Skip, mate. Like, it's not like we've got a clear option there to play instead. And I think the same comes with Basuma, right? It's kind of you're picking the right man, because you're between Højbjerg and Basuma in the 6th position as well. And fine, you might be picking between the lesser of two evils in a certain position, and arguably Basuma's out of form or whatever. Yeah. But like, did Ange, in your view, still get that lineup wrong? And did you have anything else to add about the fixture as an entirety?
So let me answer the second bit of that question first. So I want to apologise to everyone because I think I might be responsible for the result yesterday. I was avidly watching it up until 4-0, and then it was like, fuck that, I'm turning that off. I'm going to chop the salad and do the potato salad for dinner. And then the phone went beep, 4-1. Phone went beep, 4-2. The missus said, go back and watch it. Like, it looks like they're back on top. Went on, shit again. So I think it's probably my interaction with Sky that totally aligned with our phases of play. So I missed the 2 goals and I saw all the crap. So I think it's probably down to me. But the point about Emerson is the reason why the look on the face was not because he put him at left back, because I think he can do a job at left back, but you can't get him to invert. You have to then say, play as a left back and play what's in front of you. Show Salah down the outside as much as you can. You've got a bit of pace. Emerson's got a little bit of pace to show him down the outside. Salah's not the best crosser of the ball. He's far more dangerous when he cuts inside. So don't ask him to play the system. Use Porro more to play that inverted system on the right-hand side. And it's horses for courses. You've got to play with what's there. That was my issue, is that too many times Emerson was on the edge of the D and we had massive holes at left back. Listen, we know that we have issues with the space at the left back, which is what our system, that's one of the weaknesses of our system. And then if you've got a midfield that can't keep hold of the ball and can't close down like we needed to yesterday, it gets exposed. So it's not Emerson per se that was the issue for me. It's the job he was being asked to do, because he's not a marauding fullback. He's a good defender and he could have done a job there. In terms of what else could be done, Stu, you just spouted up with Dragusin. He could have played there. You could have put Mickey at left back and Dragusin at centre half with Romero. There are options that you could have explored, and Van der Ven would definitely have the pace to keep Salah under control. Does he have the movement and the nimbleness to do it? I don't know, but that was always going to be a weak area for us yesterday, and it was exploited. And then the Madders GLC bit together. That's an interesting thought, because I think you can do that if you've got a really solid 6. When you got Basuma who listen, I really do think there's a player there in Basuma, but he gives the ball away so cheaply in dangerous areas a lot of the time. He's not carrying the ball like he used to. So I think the 2 of those together would be a bit much at the moment. But I tell you, a player next season, you watch it, and I've said in the group, Bentancur will be an absolute beast next year, I promise you. Once he's had a pre-season with Ange, once he's back at it, he's going to be an absolute monster next year, without a doubt. I think he showed a couple of touches in the first half that were just lovely. And I'm pinning my hopes there a bit. You get a 6 behind him. We need a world-class 6 in there to do that job, because that's where we can't take the ball and beat the press at the moment. We keep losing the ball playing out from the back, and that's gonna be a killer for us. Whoever you're playing, if they press you. The other thing we didn't do was we didn't mix it. Well, I tell you, we did mix it up when Richie came on, and we went long a couple of times. Then Liverpool were a bit uncertain about what we were going to do, right? So why not do that from the start? Why not get Vicario to launch it a couple of times down the channels, to get Sonny after it, to get Johnson after it, and put Liverpool a little bit on the back foot. So if they press, you could take 4 or 5 players out of the game by going long into the channels, and then the defenders are starting to think, well, this could go either way, and there's an element of doubt in their mind about how they're gonna play. All they did yesterday was press us further and further back, and you know what it's like. We must have all been screaming at the telly, just fucking launch it. And it's like, that's not how we want to play, but there's times where you've got to get it out of danger rather than play yourself into trouble.
All right, Phil Merson, calm down. No, I'm joking. But you're right. I think bringing up Vicario here, I want to, in a minute, lead on to some discussions about decision-making from referees, because having now had time to decompress, look at decisions and try not get emotionally involved with, that's unfair because I support Tottenham. I really believe the last 2 games there's been massive decisions.
Yeah. Well, that Hong Kong Fooey challenge was ridiculous, wasn't it?
Incredible. It's up there with the one.
How can you have your
6 stitches for?
And then someone on Twitter posted, it's not a foul because he's got the ball. Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, fine. Yeah. No worries. No worries. You're
I can
right.
just
You
run up to someone
idiot.
and lever them in the face and kick the ball off them, can I?
Exactly.
But that's exactly what Neville said on the commentary. He's like, well, even if he did get contact, he got the ball first. I'm like, but aren't you the same bloke that was screaming for Romero to get sent off, who kicked the ball first, and on the follow through got the Chelsea player? I mean, you can't have it both ways.
Yeah. It's an endangering opponent, and that's a red card offence.
But I find Spurs, the rest of the league are all in this kind of, you're innocent until we can prove you guilty. But Spurs, it's like, you're just guilty of everything until we can prove you innocent. Do you not feel there's a bit of like a different, I'm not saying one's better than the other, but that we get a different form of evaluation from referees than others.
100%,
And therefore you're kind of like, we're going to have to
there
clip
was,
that.
but there was so many examples. I mean,
Right, I was rushing. Before you go to that, I was
anyway, going back to it, I mean, there's so many cases. The foul on Kulusevski that they came out with later saying it should have been a penalty. Then the soft foul for that lot, they get it. The so-called foul on Raya for the disallowed Bournemouth goal. Every time people are backing into Vicario, pulling at his gloves, it's not a foul, just suck it up. Vicario's got to be more physical. Welcome to the Premier League. What is that bullshit to start with? It just drives me nuts. But we can't complain because we're Spurs and we just whinge.
Yeah, and there is that whole culture thing in the media and with Spurs that you're the nearly people, and it's kind of amusing to find ways in which we can justify that tag that we have against you. And it's that whole subconscious bias statement, I think, rings so true with Tottenham. And it's kind of like, yeah, but those are the guys that always fall short. So, like, it's just normal for that decision to be the one that doesn't benefit them. And they're not doing it to consciously be like, let's make Spurs suffer. But there's this kind of like whole culture.
It's the consistency. It comes back to Stu's point about the consistency. And, without, and I don't want this to sound like it's a rant against Arsenal, but they're the most recent examples that we can look at over this weekend. If you look at two penalties that we haven't got this season, i.e. Kulu the other week and Werner, a couple of months ago, where they were far more blatant trips than dragging your foot along the ground and kicking the goalkeeper, that Havertz got, and all this bullshit. Shearer's on there going, oh, he's entitled to do that. You're not entitled to do it. He was past the keeper and flicked his boot out. Yeah, and then that piece around the push on Raya, it's like, it's just nonsense. He hardly touched him. The fact that Raya can't come out and claim that ball is Raya's issue, which is what's levelled, like you say, Stuart, Vicario all the time. And it's not even the decision, it's the consistency of decisions across the board. That's the thing. And VAR is just a nonsense in this because if anything should drive consistency, it's VAR that should drive the consistency.
Jonny, you got something in your tongue.
No, I don't have a whole lot to add. I mean, I guess if we're talking about agendas or I mean, okay, I'm a Tottenham fan, so I'm biased as well, and I do think that I don't think there's a campaign against Spurs or anything like that.
No.
I don't think we've been very clever sometimes about like the Kulusevski one, the way he stayed up and tried to stay on his feet, and other players and other teams maybe are better coached at taking advantage of opportunities to give the referee more of a decision to make. And I mean, also yesterday there was contact made by Van de Ven on Gakpo in the first half, which when I saw the replay, I thought, shit, no, like they're going to get a penalty. And I was quite surprised actually when there wasn't. I mean, I'm not saying it was a strong appeal, but you've seen penalties given for far more than that. So in the interest of fairness, I think that, I mean, I don't think there's a debate that the Gomez challenge on Johnson was, I have no idea why that wasn't a penalty. But there was one from the other point of view as well. But it is weird. Like I was reading something this morning about Dermot Gallagher, who does the Sky referee kind of thing, and he was saying the same thing that Gary Neville was saying, that basically he said it's a really risky challenge, and if he makes contact with the player, then it's going to be a penalty because of how high his boot is. But because he gets the ball, it's a great challenge and a risk worth taking. But like Si said, I mean, my understanding is it is ultimately reckless if you got your head, if you got your boot anywhere near that height when somebody's head is in the way. So yeah, it doesn't make sense, and it's just like exactly what you're saying about VAR. It doesn't make any sense. I don't understand. I don't understand. And I suppose like there were some changes during the week since the last pod, wasn't there? Talking about next season, what's going to happen in the stadium with regard to some kind of communication to the supporters. I'm not really sure exactly how far that goes, but I think there's still quite a way to go from what I understand, like just in terms of having a bit of confidence in the system. So yeah, it's pretty.
But Jonny, the thing of referees are never going to be fully aligned because there's subjectivity in most decisions. Like, because you can't write in a rule book what defines deliberate versus not deliberate.
No, it's a judgment, right?
It's a judgment call.
It is a judgment call.
There's always a perception that has to come in. And the issue is of refs, you give different perceptions based on each ref because you're all individual humans with different views on it. And then there's another thing where another layer of people go, you give another level of perception based on the reputation of a team, of a club, of an individual, whatever it is. And I kind of feel it's similar to, and bear with me here. This is a good one. I think
here we go.
All right, I got another one. With siblings, right? The elder sibling will get treated differently to the younger sibling, despite the fact you've got the same parents.
Yeah.
Right? And I kind of feel like it's the same thing with football teams in a weird way. It's the same person setting the rules and doing the discipline and the parents. But if the eldest one typically gets away with less, then the youngest one does. And I kind of feel like it's a bit like that in all walks of life. You kind of have these certain, and clubs have very strong affiliations with people and reputations of people. And a Man United used to, when they were at their crown, have this kind of, I don't want to mess with them. They're Man United. Like it's Fergie. He's going to come out. He's going to ban me from the press conference, and I'm never going to get to meet where I'm going to sell most of my papers from in an interview of Sir Alex Ferguson. But if I go in with Tottenham, who gives a shit? Martin Yole's going to be sacked next year anyway. If I can get a rise out of that guy, I'm going to get much more bites. And you know what I mean? It's just very different treatment to different clubs.
So I think for me, Jim, the unintended consequence of VAR has been that the referees are now, in a lot of cases, I think, scared to make a decision. And what they're doing is they're allowing VAR to have another look at it to be told that it will be overturned. So we've taken the power away from the on-field decision. So what you need to do is you need to give that power back to the on-field refereeing team, the linesman and the referee, more like they do in rugby, where the referee asks for engagement with the video ref rather than the video ref intervening to say you're wrong. So, for example, if the referee thinks that that was a dangerous challenge by Gomez, instead of us relying on VAR to say, the ref should then be going to VAR saying, is there anything I need to see there? What have you seen that I haven't seen? Can you give me some guidance on whether that was a dangerous play or not? And the VAR can come back and, like they do in rugby, you might agree or disagree with it, but at least the ref is asking for information. Or if a goal is scored, is there any reason why I can't give that goal? I'm looking at maybe that number 9 was offside. Can you check that for me, please? Which is exactly what they do in rugby. Is the ball being put down? Was it grounded and was it in control? I'm looking for 8, doing this. Can I give the try? Yes, there's no reason why you can't give that try. Fantastic. And the ref's still in control of the process, rather than VAR re-reffing the game all the time.
But you still run the risk, like we did in the derby, where the VAR bloke apparently said to the ref, "You might want to have a look at it," and he said, "No, I'm good, thanks."
But then we just accept. We then just have to accept that. Yeah. That the ref has made an on-field decision, and that's what.
But then we go back to the pre-VAR days, which is why we got VAR. That we don't trust the referees because they've got the bias, and I don't think there is a solution.
No, because all you're doing is you're kicking the subjectivity further down the line. Yeah. You're kicking it to another location. That's all you're doing, because you're just kicking it to whatever they go, Stockley Park, aren't you? So you've just got another set of referees that have got more angles, and they're making a judgment call, and that judgment call could be wrong. So we're trying to perfect a game that is, the beauty of it is its imperfection. That's the beauty of it is the subjectivity. I think this, you think that, is the debate. You can't get it 100% right. legislate for the things that you can get nearly 100% right. Automatic offsides, goal line technology. I'm all for that. Keep all of that. Automate the offsides and then shut up because nobody argues about those automated offsides. And then let the referees make the decision as far as I'm concerned. There's too much. There's still too much subjectivity.
Do you know what scares me here? And this was Kieran Maguire posted. The PGMOL have their own P&L and their own revenue streams.
Oh.
And this really scared me. Like, so they've had a 20% rise year on year increasement in funding, and that's largely led from we need more money to make VAR work, which is making me worry now that what we've done is we've basically, and obviously they've stuffed a lot of that money into wages, and their average salaries as referees have gone up to, I think it's 111,000 a year, which, by the way, to be the best in the world at your job and be that is completely fair enough. I'm not arguing with that at all. But what I'm arguing with is, shit, we've given an unregulated group of people an opportunity to make themselves more money by justifying the existence of a tool that's not really working. But rather than them go, they're not going to go, you know what, semi-automated offsides, that's great. Let's just reduce it and just make it to clear and obvious areas and not make this take over the game. They're going to be thinking, how do we get this deeper and deeper and deeper into football and make it a bigger profit engine for us? Because if this thing is worth millions and millions, we're the ones taking the cream off the top here. That's what worries me about VAR now. I'm like, it's just gone too far. Jonny, go. Sorry.
The problem is, though, I mean, you've got this is a global product, right? And the credibility of the game, the integrity of the game has been repeatedly come under question. And, you know, for us as really committed supporters, it leaves a really bad taste in the mouth on a regular basis, and a real sense of frustration, sometimes decisions that have, you know, potentially massive consequences. And the sort of thing at the end of the day, well, if this continues to go along as it has been, then are we going to lose people? Are people going to lose interest in sport? Are they going to, you know, and then the money that is potentially lost as a result of that frustration and whatever, you know, is that more of a threat to the game? Because my understanding is that you know, we've got different associations have got different ways that they apply the rules.
Well, Swedes have said we're not doing it, right?
Right. So then
Swedes have said we're not having it.
And Ange said he's moving there.
The VAR people don't have the VAR people don't have all of the power in this, and I really like what Si's just suggested there, and I understand what Stu's saying with regard to the Kulusevski thing, but like at the end of the day, I think a huge amount of the problem is that there's a sort of a huge dilution of the power or the control in the arms in the hands of the referee in the game, and they're there, and that's really negatively affecting the experience.
Guys, and just a quick final point on that, and maybe to pick Stu's brain just very quickly. So I've watched quite a bit of the European football this year, and there doesn't seem to be the same level of scrutiny even in the Champions League games. There's not the stop-start that there is in the English game, and I wonder whether the PGMOL are trying to, because there's so much pressure, so much scrutiny here, they're trying to get every single tiny decision right, and that is what is crippling the game. And it doesn't seem to be. And I wondered in the league, Stu, you watch the Dutch league and the Italian league probably a little bit more than we do. And I was just wondering, what's the feeling in those leagues around VAR, and is it as stop-start as it feels like it is in the English game?
Yeah, it's not as slow as the Premier League when it comes to making decisions, but there is the same conversations about still managing to screw up. I don't think anybody's happy with VAR, to be honest.
Okay.
Like, let's just summarize this, right? We do a podcast about Tottenham Hotspur. We're 30 minutes in, and we've spent 20 minutes debating VAR.
Yeah.
Let's just summarize how much it's consumed and taken over.
I hate it.
Like, I've gone for someone who's been like, 100% get it in. 1,000%. I am sick of Man United, Fergie time, Liverpool, every decision, to being like, fuck it. Give them that 1 yard offside. It can't be worse.
But it's like Brexit. No one voted for this.
But
No one voted for this version of VAR. No one wanted this version of VAR.
But on a serious note side, there is an air of truth to that. Where when I was like pro VAR, I was thinking, great, we'll check
me too.
offsides.
Yeah, I was pro.
We'll stamp out someone, 2-footing someone in the knee and getting away with it, and Suarez biting someone's ear off. That was it.
Yeah.
I thought that was it. But they've just gotten so overly involved. They love being celebrities.
But you need AI involved. You need to take out the human factor, because even you can see it's not just the refs. You can see it with the pundits. They'll justify the Liverpool, the Arsenal dive, and in our case, you could say it wasn't enough contact. It wasn't, they didn't touch him enough, and they'll justify why it wasn't given. There's too much human and bias involved. You just need AI in there, and that's it.
The problem is, Stu, though, it will be Man City Football Club AI sponsoring the Premier League and running all the decisions.
They're going to win anyway, so who cares?
They're going to win anyway. Well, actually, no, Pep's running for the hills, so I think there's something going to happen there. I think something's going to happen. I think Pep knows.
Inshallah.
Even their cockiest people on social media have gone a bit quiet lately. So let's be hopeful. But so we should just finish off with a bit of Spurs chat, I think, guys. I don't think we should.
Yeah, go on then. Why not?
So I do think there was some definite positives, right? When you go from the Chelsea to Liverpool game, I think there's been an acceptance from Ange that some things are within his control that he can do differently, but ultimately don't expect any seismic shift until he's had time to get players that fit what he's trying to do, right? You're going into any game, and this was really, really, I think it's one of the best pods I've ever listened to. It was back in February on Rule the Roost, and they had some independent football fan on. He was like supporting Juventus or something, but he was explaining that Spurs' squad at the moment, they're in a situation where they can't physically challenge for a title, because if they lose a fullback, if they lose a wingback, Emerson Royale or Ben Davies go into the equation. And I'm sorry, he said, in his view, as someone who's supporting a title challenging club, they are just not that level. And then if you lose your 6, you're playing Højbjerg, who in his view is technically incapable of playing that role. Then you've got 2 wingers, and you've got one good one and a maybe good one. Then you've got a striker, you're saying he's streaky, he's injury prone, but he's all right on his day. And then you've got a 10 in Maddison, and you're saying this is our Kevin De Bruyne, except he's not Kevin De Bruyne because he'll give you an 8 out of 10 for half the season. And that is why he's 40 million quid and not 120 million quid. I'm sorry, this is why.
Yeah.
And teams like Liverpool were similar, right? They had that kind of squad, and then they lost Van Dijk to injury, and everything fell to pieces. One player just losing it could destroy everything. And they took years building to this point where you go, it's okay, I've lost this person, I've got a sparky player on the bench. They might not be as good, but they fit the role, they know the job, and they're capable of putting through a 6 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10 every week. We just don't have that, do we, guys? And I just think this kind of like emulates the whole situation of Spurs moment. I just find it so infuriating, because if I go into a season, what about you? If I choose 3 teams and I can choose I'm playing them home and away to beat in a season, I would go, I want to beat Arsenal at home, love that derby day. I want to go to Stamford Bridge and I want to beat Chelsea and rub their noses in it. And then I want to go away at Anfield and I want to ruin Klopp's year. And we had all those games in a row, but we always lose those games. We occasionally beat Arsenal at home.
Yeah, we do.
And therefore the misery levels, because most Spurs fans, subconscious, those are the games most people win, it's just so exasperated at the moment. It's insufferable on social media. Am I being a romantic who's lost here, Jonny?
No, no, you're not. It's like, I mean, we do have a good record in the derbies, the Arsenal game over the last 10 years at home. Only lost a couple. I know we've now lost 2 in a row, but last year we were absolutely horrendous, and this year, it was a strange game that we probably shouldn't have lost. But I think the Newcastle one, the fact that we got turned over so heavily against Newcastle for the second year in a row, I think that's definitely ramped up the lack of patience or the willingness to look at things in perspective from a lot of people. and then there was the 2-week sort of gap between that and the Arsenal game, and then we got the 3 games in 8 days. So I mean, I think it's just a really bad alignment of like fixtures, and there have been really some really poor performances in there. Like there's no getting away from it. But like you just said, I mean, we've got when we got Emerson Royal played out of position, a bunch of players played out of position. Obviously, Richarlison's not really fully fit, so he's not being available. And there's not the whole lot of things that we could say Andrew to be doing differently. And I personally think that given his pure dedication to his system, and for it to work, for it to eventually, hopefully, be as ingrained as it needs to be, then he kind of does. I'm not saying you don't adapt and you don't try and mix things up like with the long ball yesterday and stuff, but I mean, he has to persist, and we have to be patient, and we have to, remember that this time last year where we were then, with Stellini or Mason or the last throws of Conte, for goodness sake, so there's a lot of things that have come on significantly. We've still got Van de Ven coming in, who most of us hadn't heard of this time last year, and he's incredible. Like Udoki's coming and surpassed most people's expectations. There's other Vicario. Obviously, he's had a really strong season, and people need to give him a bit of break. Yeah, he needs to work at some really important areas, and the team need to get work and support him. But there's a lot of things that we should feel positive about, and I mean, yeah, it's been frustrating. Nobody likes to lose 4 games in a row, but when you look at the fixtures, like you just said, those are games we almost always lose. Certainly the 2 away ones. So,
I think we also forget that poor Royale. He's such a nice bloke, and I don't blame him. I mean, he was involved in 3 of their 4 goals, but I don't blame him. He's playing out of position, and I think we often forget that left-hand side for us has been a disaster. We've lost Sessegnon, Davis,
very good point,
and Udogi for the left back, and we've lost
Solomon, Werner,
and Perisic for the left wing. We've lost an entire side.
6 players. That is insane.
It is
not small injuries, Stu.
Yeah,
we're talking like
not niggles. They're
season injury. I mean,
But guys, this is why we can't go and sign an £100 million 6, because they'll just snap their ACL on the first day. You know what I mean? Like if City go and sign Rodri, he'll play 90% of the games over 3 years. Arsenal won't see Rice injured now for the next 5 years. We'll go and sign some 23-year-old
superstar,
never been injured in his life. He will walk out training.
He'll break his back in the first game.
He'll slip on a banana or something and just.
You guys laugh, but do you? I mean, maybe Jim doesn't. He's too young. But do you remember Willem Korsten? We bought him from Leeds. He was a Dutch lad, youngster, very promising. I think he lasted 2 games before his career ended.
We'll do that to him. We'll do that to him.
That just sums up the Spurs. And didn't we had the Irish Rooney, didn't we? Kerry Dixon. I mean, he got injured in training, and that was it.
Yeah, and I think the frustration comes from, it's almost like our start to the season set the expectations, right? Because your experiences in life are always judged by your expectations of what that experience will be. And the first 10 games, we were like, we were cock a hoop. We were, until that Chelsea game. And what happens when you're going through significant change? You judge that change by your certain milestones and where you have successes. And we had almost too much success too soon, and that's where our bar went to. And we were never gonna maintain that for the whole season. So we've regressed to the median, and 5th, 6th is probably about where we should be in terms of our team, our squad, our spending, and our wage structure is probably where we should be. So have we got a manager who has belief? Yes. Do we have players who have belief? I think it's a bit of a mixture at the moment. And to Ange's point, some will move on in the summer, some will come in. Some will move on of their own volition because they see the writing on the wall and it's not for me and I don't want to be on this journey. Fantastic, let's help you go. Some will go because Ange doesn't think that they're good enough, or whatever attitude or aptitude, it's not good enough, so move them on. We'll get some in, and hopefully the ones that we get in will be absolutely, your attitude in Ange's team has to be absolutely A1 as a marker to get in. The aptitude is a little bit different. You could be the best player in the world with a shit attitude and he won't have you. And then what you've got to do is you've got to then build on the consistency. And I think that's where some of the frustration lies, is when we're good, we're very good. And in spells in games, we are, in spells in that, like that 20 minutes when we scored the 2 goals and we played some really nice football in that time. But we don't do it consistently enough. And one of the problems we've got is we have no idea what our best midfield is. We have no idea out of all of those players, when they're all available, who's going to start.
But so I think we get in these proverbial loops of fans like, we haven't figured out our best midfield yet, when in reality we just don't have a good midfield.
But
So
I
it's
think
like,
we do have
desperate for
I
the
think
Yeah.
we do. I think we do have a good midfield, but I don't think it chops and changes so much that, first of all, the defence then don't know who they got playing in front of them, so you don't build that rapport. And then how do you link in with the front three that keeps changing as well? So it's not me moaning. This is a journey we're on, right? So the back five, we know everyone's fit. Everyone knows our back five. Yeah. So then what you've got to do is you've got to build what's in front of that back five. So a decent 6, world class or not, we call it world class. You call it whatever you want. It's not going to be 100 million, but you go out and buy a really good 6. Yeah, and that starts to solidify that, and then you build from there. It's going to be another 2-3 transfer windows before we're ready.
You've got to keep Basuma as well in the squad, right?
Yeah.
I think you do. Yeah, I think Basuma and Sarr,
Yeah.
Basuma, Sarr, and Bentancur are absolutely. I think they're really, really good players, but they're not 6s.
No, they're not.
But Højbjerg goes and is replaced by the top 6. But the thing that frustrates me is he's chopped and changed that midfield, and Jonny referred to earlier. He's chopped and changed a million times. I can't remember the last time he started with the same 3 for consecutive matches, except for one player, and he brought on Gilles before him against Chelsea, and that wound me up no end.
What are we doing?
What on earth has GLC done to not be given a chance? In the derby, he created more chances in 3 minutes than anybody else on our team. And the
I
next
don't know
game,
what he's
he
done.
after Gilles, for fuck's
Yeah,
sake.
but it's because he's not going to be here next season, and Ange is playing.
Neither is Gilles.
Yeah, true. Because I've got to wrap up here, but I want to finish on one of my favourite, not my favourite because it's a horrible thing to say favourite, but there's a Spursy moment which I think sums up us as a football club very well. So in 1963, Tottenham finished 5 points off the title, right? 5 points off. We'd won the double. We were going into the next season challenging for the title. And do you know what happened to our midfield talisman? He got struck by lightning playing golf and died. John White died getting struck by lightning. Only that happens to Tottenham and nothing is made of it. I just find it's just one of those stories. There's a whole book on Tottenham's most Spursy moments, and it is incredible the amount of bad luck we've had as a football club. So I would just say, I think a lot of that Ange has had to cope with as well in the modern day era, that you couldn't make up the number of injuries this guy's had to deal with, having a fan base that has supporting a club that's the 5th most revenue. It's won the 5th most trophies in England, but the fan base expect it to be in the top 3 every single season. And we are going to finish in the top 5, maybe 6th at worst, and that's deemed an abject failure in your first 10 months at a football club. Just blows my mind. Anyway,
the other thing is,
go on, Jonny.
Jim, you start wearing that blue away shirt again, and Si needs to stop watching.
I'll bring it on, but Jonny, I put on a bit of timber, and it's a bit tight fit. I look a bit like I've gone from looking like
Sacrifices for the team, mate.
I've gone from looking like I don't know, Brian Hill to looking like Ndombele in the space of 6 months. So
good effort. Good effort, son.
Yeah. But anyway, boys, up the Spurs.
Spurs.
Go Spurs!
Yes.